Hello and welcome to SDM's video for March of 2022, focusing on data tracking, both on the web, on your cell phone, and just in general. We'll probably end up focusing on Google and iPhone use as specific examples, but these same principles apply across the board. And you are always able to make a one-on-one appointment with us to go over these things specifically with you and your data. The information age. The current era we live in is centered around data, analytics, and information gathering. This was true in the 70s and 80s when the white pages was created with data collected via the phone companies. Data that people willingly gave away, as well as the rights for the data to be used as phone companies see fit. Somewhere in the contract signed with phone companies were the details regarding this, and the option to opt out for a fee. However, most people didn't read the fine print and needed to have a phone, so little thought went into what you may be signing up for beyond the phone services. This same concept applies today, but it is much more prevalent because almost any company or service you interact with is collecting some amount of your information about you. What they're able to do with it depends on the terms and conditions you agreed to when signing up to use the service. The thing that we always say, agree to and don't read, so that we can move along with what we're trying to do. The change in technology was enough to cause some to be more vigilant when signing up for services to see what else you are agreeing to, but for many, it took mainstream media picking up the story of companies selling your information to really take notice. Thankfully, at this point, there is more clarity, or at least attempts at clarity, in regards to what is tracking your data, what data it is tracking, and how that information is to be used. This is in large part thanks to the EU General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR for short, as well as laws passed in some states in the US such as California, Colorado, and Virginia. The laws changed how large technology companies interact with their users and user information, reaching far beyond the borders of the EU and select US states because of the nature of the internet, putting a bit more power in the hands of the everyday person to protect their data, or at least have better understanding of how companies use it and the ability to opt out of such programs. When I say the nature of the internet expands the reach of those laws, what I'm saying is that if a user in any of those places goes online to use a service, it doesn't matter where the service is headquartered. They have to create that service in accordance with those laws, which means that the companies end up doing it in a broad stroke so that everyone from everywhere ends up benefiting from those laws and changes the companies make. So even if you don't live in the EU or those states, those changes have appeared in your lives as well. They're the reason for the difference in how Google, for example, like I have on the screen, goes about telling you this information, explaining it, breaking it down, and allowing you to, choose what you want to have tracked, not tracked, and how they use it. At least, definitely more than it was before. More in your hands. So now, why don't we take a little look at exactly what some of those changes are. First, we'll look at that in terms of a Google account, which will be similar to other online accounts, like maybe Amazon account, other email services. The more intertwined with different aspects of what you can do on the internet, which is very vague. Basically, the larger the company is, the more likely they are going to be tracking your data in various ways. The more services they offer, the more data they can track because of the nature of each service. And that will become more apparent as we go through this process. So right now I am in my Google account, and to get there, as long as you are signed in to your Google account / Gmail, which is the same thing, you can click on your profile picture in the top right corner of the window, and then click on Manage Your Google Account, which is exactly where I was. However, instead of on the home page, I went to Data and Privacy. So one thing that is immediately apparent is a privacy checkup. And why don't we just go ahead and do that? So currently, my settings are that I have auto delete on for web and app activity, meaning that, as it says, saving your activity means you'll get more personalized experience in Maps, search, and other Google services, like faster searches and better recommendations. You can change your settings anytime to make sure they're right for you. Clicking on that takes us to a detailed page about this specific data, which is web and app activity. So in general, I have it on that they're going to save some of this information to, make services surrounding location, recommended experiences, purchases, a bit more personalized. I also have the ability to change various aspects of how this works. I can decide to include Chrome history and activity from sites, apps, and devices that use Google services, and I don't have that. And apparently it's not available for my account type. I can include audio recordings, which I wouldn't want to do. And then I have auto delete on, and it's currently set to anything older than 18 months. I can click here and take a look at what web and app activity I already have in store right now, or what Google has rather. And if I click on the auto delete, it allows me to either turn that off or change the period. I'm just going to do 3 months, and also has some answers to common questions. And if any of you are wondering what web and app activity is, this is exactly why those changes were made, so that you can get into these areas and learn for yourself. However, as you can see, it's even a bit of a process just to get to here. And even though I've known about these settings and have checked them out a little bit before, they change constantly in how they're set up. Just like everything else, it gets updated, it gets changed in terms of layout, how you interact with it, and some of these things are even surprising me. All right, and so I could probably go ahead and automatically jump to changing the auto delete times for some other things, but instead I'm going to close out this tab so we're back at the privacy checkup. So we were still on the first step of this privacy checkup, and yet there is all of this other information and settings for us to interact with, peruse, get a better understanding of. And as you can see, it is quite a lot, and it seems a bit overwhelming. But if you truly care about how your data is being used, this is exactly what you want, because it is a lot less overwhelming than it was before these laws had an effect. A page like this didn't really exist. Anything like it would have been legal jargon. But now at least it's in layman's terms, and it is definitely allowing you a lot more control with what you have on and off, such as web and app activity, location history, YouTube history, various other things, ad personalization, personal results in search. But let's go back up to the privacy checkup. So we went on a deep dive for web activity, but since you see how much there is concerning all of this, we can't exactly do that for each and every thing. So the same way that we can do a deep dive in web and app history, we could do the same thing for location. And as you can see, it's relatively the same, although a bit less going on in terms of, how much we see on the screen. But location service is probably one of the more frequently used types of data. So by apps, meaning that the amount of times this would get registered as you using location services in one way or another is probably pretty high. And what I mean by that will be a little bit more clear when we get to the iPhone, because it's got a very interesting feature that I only found out about recently, and I think most of you will want to turn on. So let's carry on with Google. Next, you can review the same type of settings for YouTube, ad settings. So I actually don't want ad personalization, so I'm going to go in here and turn this off. I had done this earlier, but thought it would be a good example to show you guys ways that you can, take over some of the control that they have, take some power back, rather. If you don't like seeing ads that make it seem like your phone is listening to you, this is one way to potentially stop some of that. Next, we have third-party apps with account access, so things that are tied to my Google account, even just loosely, whether like I'm, logging in with Google, or there needs to be access given for some sort of interaction between the apps, like using the calendar, Google Drive, URL shortener, YouTube, and then here's some other examples. And apparently it can be as vague as some account access. Okay, just basic info. Alrighty. And then here's signing in with Google. So things that you can actually use to sign in with Google and things that I've allowed that for. And last in the privacy checkup, we have what you share on YouTube. Who can see, playlists and subscriptions that I have. I didn't know that that was a feature, actually. That's pretty cool. And it's good to see that I think the default is private, or at least in my account's case. Maybe if it was a personal account, since my account's under a business organization, maybe the default settings are different. These are all the type of things that you will want to find out for yourself by going to a location like this for each and any service you think might be doing something inappropriate with your data, or is using your data, which is all of them, and you want to get a better understanding of what they're doing with it. So let's just see, go over a couple of things still within data and privacy here in Google. We could spend hours doing this, but since we're constrained for time, there's only so much we can do. But I think, going over some of these will be useful. Just, just grazing the topics. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, always feel free to make a one-on-one appointment with us and come down and talk about any of these things to your heart's content. We can do a deep dive on your data and make sure that, things are set to your liking, at least to the utmost of what's possible. Okay, things I've done and places I've been, info I can share with others. data from apps and services you use. Okay. These are just the different locations on this list. Okay. But things I've done, places I've been, that's akin to what we were doing in the privacy checkup. These would take me to basically some of those same menus. Ad settings, which I just turned off. Personal search results. I also don't really want that. And you can see exactly what that means here. Auto completing personal answers based on your Google account info. I'm just going to go ahead and turn that off. Apps and services, so we just saw those in the checkup as well. And then they have made it, very more user-friendly, very much more user-friendly than it had been in the past, although it's definitely still overwhelming. There is a whole lot here, and it's hard to say, from a cynical point of view, I might say, oh, they're making it as complicated as possible. When, a optimistic side of me or a practical side of me knows that there's a lot to break down, and to do so in an easy and digestible manner is not that easy of a task. So, I mean, as much as I don't want to live in 1984, I think that Google is doing a good job of being more transparent with what they do, and once again, like I've mentioned, giving the user some more power over their own data, power and control. So, like I said, we could definitely just get lost in here, but before we do, I think that we should move on to the iPhone so we can discuss how it works there and on phones, because all devices and accounts are going to be doing this to some extent. And I would like to go over the interesting feature that I found on the iPhone, or I didn't find it, but I just recently came across it myself. And I think that many of you will like seeing that. Okay, so here we are on the iPhone, and we're going to go into settings. Now we're going to scroll down to privacy, and what we're going to see in privacy is everything that we can allow or deny access to when apps require these things for a certain feature, or ask for them for an additional feature that you could have. For example, if Zoom wants to use the microphone, or contacts, like many applications often ask access for, and same with calendar. And that applies to everything else as well. But down below, we have analytics and improvements, and in there, it will show everything that you are going to share with Apple. And as you can see, it can be quite a wide variety of things, all the way up to hand washing, just based on, how you use your phone, or how it moves the GPS and minor details like that. App advertising, which is where you turn on and off the ability to get personalized ads from Apple that target you based on what you do on your phone, what they know about you. And lastly, the app privacy report, which shows exactly when apps go and contact websites, and how often they do so, and what websites they contact. And this here is just with me having turned it on for about 5 minutes, and you can see how many different times those apps made contact with different websites. So it's definitely something worthwhile to check out. It's not on by default. And once again, just showing you that we get there by going into privacy after getting into settings.